So Wuthering Waves is currently on version 1.1. Version 1.2 is not that far away, and I will be testing out the game performance on 1.2 as well. But I've seen people say that they optimized the game on version 1.1, and I can tell you right away, that's not true. That's a big lie. The game's performance is not any better. And primary reason for that is the outdated API that the game is running in. Now, the game is made in Unreal Engine 4, and Unreal Engine 4, 5 by default run in Vulkan. So honestly, I have no idea why Kuro Games thought that it was a smart idea to go with OpenGL with such a complex big game. But today I'll show you the performance of this game on a 8th Gen 2, which has a big GPU, still one of the more powerful chipsets out there, one of the more efficient ones as well. And today I'll be adding some new monitors. You will see some new windows. Basically, I will show you the CPU temperature, the amount of power used by the device, and things like that. Basically, things that you will probably not see on any other game test review, because most don't show that, and I want to show as many stats as possible so that we can see why a game runs good or why a game runs bad. In this case, Wuthering Waves, a game that had a notoriously bad launch, not as bad as Warzone Mobile, but still the launch of this game was really rough, and even to this day, 2 months later, it still struggles with a lot of issues. Now, this is going to be the CPU temperature window that I'll be using. It's a free app that you can download on the Play Store if you like. You can also easily replicate every single task that I'm doing here, since every single application here is available to be downloaded on the Play Store or any other store that you prefer to use. This little application, I love it because it actually shows you how much power is being used by your whole device, by the chip, by the GPU and CPU. And you can see that the power usage increases as I play with the display here. So this will show us how much power is being used by the whole chipset. The more power used, the more this thing is actually working. And here you can also check out some battery stuff, but the battery isn't really important. The only important statistic on the battery is the temperature, so battery temperature is the most important actually. But yeah, and this is how I usually set this up. I have both of these windows floating about, and that's how I get very accurate readings of what's happening inside of this thing. Now, I've actually been experimenting around to see if the simple system monitor, I think I will be using the simple system monitor as a floating window in some other tests, since it's honestly, I would say, easier, and it shows just a lot more thermal zones, a lot more sensors on the CPU. But I did have both of these applications side by side just to see if they give the same result. And yeah, they do give the same result. The only difference is the first floating window shows the whole CPU, while the simple system monitor shows every single core available, and of course the GPU cores are included as well. So I think I'll be using the simple system monitor from now on in some other tests, and just because it gives more information about the core count and single core temperature, and I already have the GPU window on the simple system monitor as well, so I believe that's going to work and be more accurate since it gives more information. The game optimizing service will be disabled, so I'll be using the alternate game performance, which means that there is going to be little to no throttling, and the chip will basically go full speed if it is allowed to go full speed by the game, since OpenGL doesn't really utilize all 8 cores, unfortunately. And the GPU watch will also be on screen, which will show us the frame rate, API resolution, and everything else that's important. So I think we are ready to start with the test, and let's open up the game. So version 1.1 added a new map. They also added some new settings. Now I did make a video on this update, but I didn't have as many windows as I have now, and I decided to be more accurate and just redo the whole video. But everything is basically maxed out, and well, I think we are set, and let's start. So OpenGL, I am really dissatisfied to see that. That's if you see OpenGL, expect bad performance. That's it. That's the only thing I can tell you from my experience from playing hundreds of games so far. OpenGL is bad for new generation of hardware because it's simply made for prehistoric GPUs at this moment. But the developers, for whatever reason, just keep pushing it, and in return we get extremely hot chips with very bad performance. Now, the game uses actually 2 or 3 CPU cores at most, creating a massive bottleneck on the CPU. Basically, it is doing that artificially. Again, Unreal Engine by default supports Vulkan. It's been like that since 2017 or 16. So they've done this manually for whatever reason, and I'm not happy. This is not the same Kuro game that I used to know back when Grey Raven was released. Grey Raven was a miracle at the time, but unfortunately this game is the opposite of a miracle performance-wise. The GPU is at about 50%, but it's not using its full capacity. It's at 475 MHz, which is roughly around 40% of maximum speed. It can go as high as 719, as we have seen with the previous game. However, that CPU though, well, that's what OpenGL does to your CPU. It basically does that. I mean, 2 3 cores going full speed instead of all 8 cores working simultaneously creates massive heating, as we see on the temperature monitor, and it creates a massive bottleneck. So not only will you have a toaster in your hands, and doesn't matter what device you have, you can have a 8 Gen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 Gen 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Every single one of these devices will perform roughly the same on this API, since that's just what this API does, unfortunately. And I can tell you that it uses CPU core 5, 6, and 4. The other cores are doing something else, probably. Yeah, the other cores are handling the recorder. And I can tell that based on the frequency. The other cores are definitely doing something else, while core number 4, 5, and 6, I believe, are playing the game. Sometimes I see the game being pushed on a big X3 core that this thing has, but that's happens actually very rarely. And I actually wish that I could see the game. Maybe I can actually look up the log file. Maybe it's written there. Unfortunately, for more detailed stuff, I would have to root the device, and if I root the device, the game will not run anymore because they blocked the rooted device from accessing the game. But yeah, OpenGL is definitely creating a massive CPU bottleneck, and that's the reason why the game is performing poorly. The FPS, the FPS is really all over the place, and it makes me really like, it makes me laugh when I see players test the GPU out on this game. Obviously, this is far from a GPU test, since the GPU is chilling. The GPU isn't doing much. And it's still funny, since I'm still getting close to 60 FPS, or roughly around 60 FPS, with such horrendous optimization. And to think that some players out there said that it's optimized now, that's completely wrong. This is not optimization, this is bad. It is obviously not noticeable when you turn off the monitors when you play normally, but I see a difference. I see a big difference. I mean, if we compare the previous game, War on the mobile that I played, that's flawless performance. That's really flawless performance, and that game is right now the most demanding mobile game that we have. And it runs the best. The most demanding game runs the best. Kind of funny when you think about it. And that's, again, primary reason is the API. OpenGL is just very, very, very bad when it comes to the FPS, especially on complex games like these. This game would benefit a lot from Vulkan, since all 8 cores would do stuff, and Vulkan by default does push more workload onto the GPU, as it should. That's why we have GPUs in PCs, in portable consoles, in handheld devices, in everything. That's what the GPU should do. But unfortunately, you cannot utilize that GPU when the developer prevents you from doing that by making the game in outdated software, or API in this case. The power usage definitely is high. I mean, high for a 8 Gen 2 at least. Not the highest that I've seen. More on the mobile, as you will probably see in one of the next tests, does go 13-14 watts, which honestly is indeed kind of impressive that it's able to get that high. But all that heat would drastically be reduced, again with Vulkan, since all 8 cores working at 20-30% is much more efficient than having 3 cores working 100%, or 2 cores working 100%. Not only will that decrease the heating, but it does reduce the power usage. I can tell you that's very noticeable when playing games made in Vulkan. When you compare OpenGL and Vulkan, when you actually play games in Vulkan and you come back to OpenGL, you really cannot go back to OpenGL anymore, since it feels like a slap to the face. Or in my case, it feels exactly like coming from 120 Hz to 60 Hz. It feels like someone slapped me to the face. That's how 60 Hz feels now. And I don't know, I mean, I've heard rumors that... I've heard a lot of rumors actually regarding the game that explain why the game runs so poorly. I played this game on PC because I definitely am not going to be torturing my device. And I'm thinking about completely boycotting games made in OpenGL. Doesn't matter what game it is, I think that I see OpenGL, I uninstall. That's the next thing that I'm probably going to do, because I think it's really time for developers to start properly coding, because it's really embarrassing to have such a good-looking game, such a good game, run in such outdated API. That's, I think, really embarrassing. And I have no idea what Kuro had thought while creating this game. The one thing that's true, Vulkan does require a little bit more coding. The code for Vulkan is a bit longer. If I remember correctly, if OpenGL is like 100 lines, Vulkan is like 500 lines, something like that. But that extra coding is definitely worth it, since you can literally triple your FPS with Vulkan, which is something that Kuro didn't do here. They went the lazy route, and they just they they did not wanna make the game in Vulkan, even though it supports in Unreal by default. But you know, and you will see that this is actually quite a common thing with most of these big games here. I'm still struggling to understand why they did that. I mean, yeah, the performance. I mean, maybe for other players this might be acceptable, but for me, no. For me, it's not. Especially since there is no reason why this game should not be running smooth. Because in reality, this is not the most demanding game out there. As I mentioned before, as I tested out before on some of the previous videos, the most demanding game runs quite literally the best. And that's quite the funny thing. Yeah, that CPU is... It can almost... I mean, it probably can boil water at the moment. So, yeah. And this is why I play this game on PC. Because it's just not worth to... It's not worth to torture your device on a badly optimized piece of software. Especially when there is technology out there available that completely removes this problem. That's the thing. I'm not mad that the game is running the way it is. I'm mad that this could have been prevented. If only they spent a bit more time coding, and if they did not go with OpenGL. That's the main reason. And again, you will not see this anywhere else, because no one else does a test like this at all. Some show the wattage, okay, that's fine. Very few show the frequencies and the load, which is the most important thing. And everyone just assumes, oh, that's just a bad chipset, that's just a bad device. No one actually checks what's happening. And that's not good, because that gives false information. In this case, why does this game run so poorly? Well, OpenGL, that's it. That's the reason. That's the reason why this game runs so poorly. Optimization, and that's no other way around it. You will get about the same FPS with 8 Gen 3. You will get about the same FPS with any Snapdragon, any MediaTek, any Exynos. I mean, you will see very little difference. I think Exynos might actually get the best performance out, because Exynos does not have OpenGL drivers. Exynos AMD graphics card actually runs on Angle, which does force the game to go through a, I think, Vulkan layer. So technically it runs in Vulkan. It is translating OpenGL into Vulkan. That's what it should be doing. I have to double check that, but last time I checked, the Exynos does not have a OpenGL driver, so the game cannot run in OpenGL on Exynos. If it does, then again that's just forced, and that's just not bad. That's not good at all. But yeah, I mean, I don't feel like torturing this device for this test anymore. At least now. I will come back to this game in 1.2 to see if anything is changed. And they said something on the lines of, in 1.2 they want to focus on mobile performance. I'm just gonna say this right away. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong, but I'm saying right away that there is going to be no difference in FPS, and there's going to be no difference in performance in 1.2. Even though they said that they'll work on it, I'll tell you right away, I'm personally thinking that nothing will happen. I expect the game to run the same way it's running now. I don't expect it to run good. The only way for this game to run good is to introduce a Vulkan API support, and to properly introduce the Vulkan API support. They do that, and every single frame rate, heating problem, and everything else that comes along with it will simply go away. This is not the most demanding game, obviously, not the most demanding, but it's definitely one of the worst coded ones that I've seen. Like it or not, that's just a fact. And no amount of overclocking will be able to solve that. This is on a softer level. Something that only the developer can do and something only the developer can fix. But anyway, that was the Wuthering Waves test. I'm not happy with the performance of this game. I'm not happy at all. There is no reason why there's no reason why it runs so bad. Vulkan API, when it's introduced, all problems will be solved. Until then, well, I mean, the game performance will be the same as we see it at the moment here. Is it playable though? Obviously, it is playable. Would I recommend that you torture your device? I mean, that's up to you. I'm here just to show you what's happening under the hood of our devices while running these games, and I am here just to show you to find a reason and solution to bad performance here. So yeah, it's still a good game. I mean, I enjoy the game. However, I've heard that developers started to do stuff that's kind of not really the thing that Kuro games should be doing, or something that I never expected them to do. But more on that on a different video, since obviously it's not really the topic for that. But very disappointed when it comes to the performance aspect of the game. Kuro Games was like the one developer that I had high hopes in, that they would deliver a well-optimized product like they did with Grey Raven. That game, for example, was a miracle code-wise. Back in the day, was the best looking game at the time, and was also running really well on everything basically. Nothing, even to this day, very few games come close to Grey Raven performance. I have no idea why they didn't do the same thing with this game. They had everything available to them and they choose not to. So that's, I think, the only thing that's actually the main thing I'm unhappy about on this game. Big disappointment when it comes to that. Can they fix it? I mean, it's honestly up to them at this moment. I mean, you could see the power usage. It's going up and down. The CPU is drawing, it did draw like a lot of power, like 12 watts only on 3 cores. That's kind of a lot, especially since it's only on 3 CPU cores or 2 CPU cores. The game is definitely not using all 8 cores, it's far from that. If it were using all 8 cores, the GPU would also actually be utilized properly, since there would be no bottleneck, as we have seen with other games. I mean, again, I'll test out a lot of games and I'll make a list. I will make a list, and that would be the proper way to test out games. But honestly, I have no idea when version 1.2 will be released. We will see how that will work. And it's not only this game. All other games of this genre have the same problem. Only one game actually that is in Vulkan runs really well, X Astris. That game, for example, is nearly flawless. Much higher FPS, much smoother, much more demanding. That game actually ate up like 5 gigabytes of RAM on my device. Caused my recorder to crash when I played that. Was impressive, because no other game did use that much RAM. Even the Wuthering Waves uses on average like 2.5 to 3 gigabytes of RAM at most. X Astris 5.5 was the most, I believe, something like that, maybe even 6. So, but that game That game is demanding and it is actually properly made. It will be one of the next games that I'll be testing out. One of my favorite games on this platform as well. It's a good game. Definitely recommend that you try it out. So, in conclusion on Wuthering Waves, now maybe I sounded a bit harsh in this video on this game. I enjoyed the game. I mean, I obviously played the game. I enjoyed the game. Unhappy about the performance and unhappy about the API choices that the developers made in the development of the game. If they took just a little bit more time, and if they took Vulkan instead of OpenGL, this video would be more on the... It would be very similar to how War Thunder is made. I would be pretty happy with the performance, since with Vulkan, the lag is just non-existent. It's impossible to lag with Vulkan. We will see what the developers will do, although, I mean, I don't really think that they'll do anything, but we will see what will happen in version 1.2. And with that being said, tell me what you think about the test in the comments down below. Tell me what you think about the game, and with that being said, stay safe. As always, I'll see you next time.